and maybe some more people will drop in as we go along. So basically, are we recording, Liz?
Yes, we are.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Amanda's asking a question if everyone can clarify if you don't have a mic on your computer or in WebEx, because then we can just correspond via chat and then repeat back what some of the things are that you're saying. So basically what we want to do today is we'd like to hear from you about your experience at the pre-conference and what you've left and gone back to your institutions with. And we'll have a number of prompt questions that we can use to start getting the discussion started. We'll be recording the session so that we can share this with other attendees who aren't available to come today. There were a few that expressed interest in this, and there were also a few that expressed interest in also sharing some of the things that they've taken back to their institutions. So it may be possible to continue this conversation in a discussion forum or something after this webinar. So just to summarize the pre-conference, so we had a 5-part workshop really introducing data and context, talking about developing instruction strategies for data management, engaging your campus community, and then 2 general modules talking about taking it home and looking to the future. The pre-conference included lectures, discussion, we had a panel and a bunch of activities. We also received some helpful feedback from the post-assessment that Yasmin will share later, or some of it, and can also provide some feedback if attendees are interested in hearing about elements in the post-assessment. So just to get started, some questions. Basically, we have 4 questions that we drafted out as starting points to maybe talk about what some of you have learned from the pre-conference, what you could take back to your institution, if you've been able to implement anything you learned, or if you just started thinking about topics we discussed. If you shared your experience or learning with your institution, and if you did, in what ways, and also what did you use or do from your action plan. So I'd like to open this up and ask our attendees. I think we have 4 who could maybe, not to put you on the spot, but maybe give us some information about what you've taken back to your institutions. So I'm not sure if we see chat status updates in the screen, but it'd be great if you could either chat, or you can even pick up the microphone. Everyone has microphone privileges. I think all you need to do that is unmute your microphone. Brett, maybe you could chat in some things that just put in the chat, basically answering any of these questions. And if Kat, Lori, and Susan, I know Susan doesn't have a microphone either, if you could just chat in some of the answers to these questions, then we could start discussing it and just do a mixed, whether you have a microphone, if you can use a microphone, or if you can use chat, we'll just mix it up. Okay, so while we're waiting for people to put things in the chat, I mean, I can share something that happened as a result of this at my institution. Basically, I'm working on a Department of Education grant with our Office of Undergraduate Research, and they're developing a research methods course specifically for engineers and science majors on campus, and there's a scholarship program where they're given stipends. But they're working on this course that's required for the students, and we're starting to have discussions now about incorporating elements of Data 1 materials into one-off sessions. The challenge we have here is we're on a quarter system, so trying to have a really integrated approach with a complete course is very difficult because we only have about 11 weeks. So I'm talking to some people on campus about incorporating elements of data management into the curricula for that specific research methods course that'll be shared with STEM students specifically. Okay, and now I see Kat has put in that she's used the action plan worksheet to keep track of what she needs to do and is still at the beginning stages of developing items, including an intro to RDM workshop, and developing a sheet which will help researchers think about their research in terms of data management. That's great.
Kat, could you expand a little bit? Sorry, this is Yasmin. On the sheet that helps researchers think about their research in terms of data management, what does that kind of look like? Or I know you're still developing it, but what do you think you want to include in it, I should say?
Okay, so I'm seeing a response from Kat that the sheet that she's developing prompts some of the basic elements of a DMP, but without getting bogged down in the details. Some of the DMP tool prompts are a bit wordy.
That's a great approach. And you're right, some of those prompts are extremely wordy, actually. And explaining the DMP in terms that they understand, the researcher understands, instead of using a lot of like the library terminology.
So are there others that are here that want to share? Okay, so Kat has another additional comment that it teaches them in steps what they need to do. That's great. All right, so we have 3 other participants. Would you each jump in and maybe share in the chat what you've been able to do or not do? It's also okay if nothing has happened. If you're thinking about it, maybe that's what you can detail. So maybe Brett, Lori, and Susan.
Yeah, this is Patricia. I was just going to say, if it's been a challenge to get a jump start on some of this stuff, it would be perhaps useful to share what those challenges have been.
Okay, so Brent says that they looked at the various CIL curricula that were suggested in order to recommend tutorials to researchers. So have you developed something out of that? So something specific to share? Okay, so but do you have plans to then go back and share some of those, or to develop an approach to talk to those researchers, Brent? Okay, I see a comment also from Susan that she shared some of the information with the Director of Sponsored Projects Office. And I see Brent has responded that they're working on developing web pages of the library that offer data management services. Okay, okay. Oh, go ahead, Yasmin.
I was going to say, I was wondering if folks wouldn't mind saying what their responsibilities are within their library. You know, if they're a director or a liaison or a data services librarian or something like that. Yeah, that's a great approach, Brent, saying that their library has a program called Library DIY that helps teach information literacy skills. They thought they might do something similar with a DMP DIY. And just, I love the approach of modifying things that you know work, that people are familiar with, that already has a built-in advertising sort of marketing message and modifying it. I think Susan's experience is really similar to our institution's experience and probably many others, that this offering data services and so on really only became a concern because of the NSF requirements. I think that's probably been the impetus for most institutions. Do you all, Patricia and Amanda and Susanna, agree?
Yeah, I think that's true of our institution as well.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the impetus for the creation of my position, definitely.
Certainly, I think there's a lot going on. I don't think our campus has necessarily figured out the best way to offer those services. We have the Office of Research we're starting to work with the Office of Research to make sure that we're consulted or get in the process to be consulted, because we can't offer that as a service. But I think our campus is probably a little behind everyone else.
Well, I think we're also actually struggling where organizationally this fits, because it's not really been a mandate, so to speak, that our subject specialists adopt this particular skill. So my department has been building some depth in this area, but we are not a department of subject specialists necessarily. That's not our primary duty. We're more a department of, I would say, functional specialists. So it's been interesting to see how this has been progressing here, and certainly with our library administration in transition, it's going to be interesting to see if subject specialists or liaison librarians will get more involved.
I think that is a really common scenario, Patricia. And I'm wondering if, for Brent and Kat and Susan, did you feel like we talked about NSF sort of being an impetus to get involved with data management concerns, but did you feel like that really came from the front line, so to speak, like the liaisons recognizing it, or were you told from maybe administration or from Office of Sponsored Programs that they wanted you to get involved with it? How did that communication occur?
So I did get an email from Lori, who's having technical difficulties, but she did share some of what she's doing. So she says that she hasn't implemented anything yet, but is partnering with another librarian in the health sciences, and that they are planning on rolling out modified modules to individual participants. And so the plan is to do the mods in June and roll out by August to give earth science faculty something to react to, and then possibly modify further for September. And she says, beyond hearing how people modified this, I really appreciated some of the instructional activities that worked, metadata computer lab, providing data sets and creating metadata for them, and writing a DMP assignment. So that was her feedback, so that others can hear about some of those things that she's implemented.
So Brent, the science librarian at Portland State, he or she has to provide all the data management services to all researchers, is that correct? And how has this person communicated to you how successful that approach is? Okay, Susan, great, thanks. Susan's saying that the library director talked to her about data management services, and then she became the person to look into it further. And Brent's saying that other subject librarians will probably help out with the science librarian. It looks like a lot of people are just really starting down this road, which is great, I think. Did you all, did you feel that the content from the pre-conference helped prepare you to, keep talking about this when you went back to your institution? Oh, great. Susan, is there the sense that there's not a huge wave of interest, but there's a sense on campus that that there will be, or that people need to know about it, and that's really the motivator there?
I don't know if it's the same reason it might not have as much of a wave of interest on my campus, but I know that most of the grant proposals that we're not a research institution, we're really an undergraduate teaching institution, so most of the grants that we would be pursuing from NSF are more institution grants, and so the kinds of data that are being collected are not as well, they're still applicable. I think all of it's applicable, but that it's not simply a research grant. So I don't know if that might be a reason that there's not as much interest. I know that may be the case on our campus, but things are really changing with some of the models they have for our faculty here to be teacher scholars. So I think that in our case it will become of higher interest, and I know our dean definitely talks to our Office of Research and Sponsored Programs about the library having a supporting role in this.
Yeah, it looks like Susan's experience with her sponsored project office is very similar to ours, to my institutions as well, where really help build some partnerships in some ways with our Office of Sponsored Programs, and definitely kind of help promote some of what the library can do and generate some goodwill on campus too.
So we talked a little bit about what was helpful or from the workshop. Is it does anyone have anything to contribute about what you feel might have been missing, or how it could be improved to address your longer term needs? Okay, so I'm seeing comments from related to the prior topic, talking about not having to consult too much on DMPs with researchers in certain areas, and also Susan stating also because they're not a big research institution, there aren't that many NSF proposals being done, which I would agree is the case in my institution as well. And then talking about what might have been missing was how to do a data curation profile, so that we reference them during the workshop, but they weren't explicitly explained. I think we did talk about it in the workshop some with the data curation profiles. I wonder how much we could include that in a workshop, just because the nature of the profiles is so, I mean, you could devote an entire workshop, well, they do devote entire day-long workshops to those specifically. I'm wondering how we could incorporate something like that and give it justice in terms of addressing the content, just because I know that the data curation profiles are very in-depth and complex. Go ahead, Yasmin.
I was going to pick up on Brent's comment about qualitative data and especially interview data. I think actually a lot of personally identifiable data also, my mind sort of just switches tracks, and I think of like IRB type data is always difficult, I think, to speak generally about. I think it's a lot easier to speak about numerical data in generalities about best practices and ways to manage and curate. But the social science librarian is on point, I think, for some of the difficulties that might be encountered with dealing with qualitative data. And I think you can look to things like ICPSR as a model, but that type of curation and attention that they pay to those data sets is not, I don't think, very easily implementable or sustainable at institutions.
Perhaps someone in the group knows, but I think some of my social sciences colleagues also use something called REDCap to keep track of that kind of data, particularly because it can't be shared beyond the project team. I know it's proprietary, but I think there are a decent number of campuses who have access to it, especially if you have a clinical training institute of some kind.
I'll also put a plug-in for REDCap, which is a product that was developed at Vanderbilt, I believe. It is often used for clinical data, but they did create some different templates for things like psychology and for mouse research as well. It does take some in-house setup to be, so that's something to be aware of, but I think it has a lot of flexibility. So some things that you might be interested in, we did get some great feedback on our post-assessment survey. That's what you guys filled out at the end of the pre-conference on site on paper. And we don't have a slide for it. We're still analyzing a lot of different factors. But some things that a few people commented on that they felt was missing from the workshop is that they wanted to have more information about actually creating a data management plan and working through that process. Do you think that's something that you would have found beneficial to include as well? And then kind of while you guys are typing along that lines, people were interested in more discipline-specific resources. So I think that kind of lines up with the feedback that Brent had from his social sciences librarian. Right, so we'd probably have to do a really general data management plan. So, not using a directorate, but just a general, maybe NSF plan. Or maybe we do something really wacky and do a data management plan for like the Moore Foundation or for the National Endowment of the Humanities, Digital Humanities section. Right, and maybe something that, because it would need, it would be hard to answer some of those questions without actually having a specific research project. We have to do one for the humanities. Maybe we could do an exercise that was about creating a data management plan and ask the participants to identify what types of information would be necessary. So there's a lot of interest in exercises dealing with humanities, like data management plan from the point of view of humanities. Amanda gets my data management plan Mad Libs idea. So it'd basically be, maybe you would create, we'd have the 5 sections of data format and, I don't know, archiving and accessing and sharing, those kinds of broad headers that most funders include to give you some guidance on the DMP. And then I think like Kat was saying earlier, tools like the data management plan tool, DMP tool, have this really wordy guidance. And what if we asked participants to write their own type of guidance for each of those? Another piece of feedback that we got were a couple of people wanted to do some more hands-on type of more hands-on programming. So maybe actually going through a data set and looking at how you would manage it. I think the organizers thought that would, when we were planning the curriculum, thought that would probably be a little too specialized and maybe assume a certain level of skills. But do you think that would be useful to have included? Okay, great. So Susan likes that idea. Brent likes it as long as it's not too technical. Right, so you probably don't want to give somebody a data set that's like 5,000, rows long and 150 columns across or something. I don't know if, Brent, if you're telling us that you're coming from the humanities is supposed to mean that you wouldn't want it to be technical because you're coming from the humanities.
There are humanities data sets too. So that, that would be fun to provide a humanities data set, even maybe spend a little time talking about what data sets are like in the humanities.
So Susan's feeling a little too over-theoried in this domain. We need more hands-on activities with the data.
Hey, this is Amanda. I have kind of a practical question related to the idea of getting participants involved in working with some data during a workshop. Would you all feel pretty comfortable working in Excel, for example, or would you also need to spend a little bit of time in a workshop sort of getting oriented in Excel?
So I'm sure the three of you can deduce that we're sort of test bedding you and your experiences and feedback. The post-assessment paper surveys were great because they were immediately after the pre-conference, so we know everything's really fresh in people's minds and what they definitely liked and what they definitely didn't like. But this nearly 2 months after the pre-conference, at the end of the semester, so we know the timing is not ideal for many people, but to know, what have you come up against and what would you have rather had more of, or what did you really like from the pre-conferences is really useful for the four of us to know what would be good future programming to offer and what we could recommend to ACRL to invest time and effort into developing. So my next question is, do you think ACRL should develop ongoing programming around these kinds of things that we've talked about today? So Susan like to see some continuing work with it. Do you think it should try to be a professional development session that tries to do all the things, including how to write a data management plan, or do you think that having multiple options that people can pick and choose from is a better approach? Oh, so Kat, you want do you want like a data information literacy track in immersion? This is great feedback. Multiple options might be a better option. It's not offered all at the same time. That would be great. Need to kind of build a track for yourself.
This is Patricia. So it sounds like it would be helpful to perhaps have a sense of what's out there that might be complementary, in addition to offering options and a way to create, one's own track at a roadshow. But I think that, it sounds like that is a resource in itself, making recommendations about what this roadshow would complement, the other resources that are out there.
Okay, so I think that it's been very helpful to have a few people here to talk about what you've implemented, what you haven't been able to implement, what you think was missing from the workshop, and how we could improve it over the long term. I think thank you so much for participating. I think we're going to, yeah, Susan, I wish we had feedback from more workshop attendees as well. I actually think that what we maybe should do, and I was talking to other panelists about this, was to create a discussion board or something online after the fact so we can hear from more, because I can say, for one, that there was at least one attendee that contacted me and said I'd be willing to share this information via email or something after the webinar today. So maybe that's something we can actually transition the things that we've talked about here and just start a discussion with some of the other participants, and then hopefully we'll see some more feedback, and it won't be just an hour. The webinar is a bit of a problem just being an hour that maybe a lot of people couldn't make it, but a discussion board we could just keep updating over the next few weeks and months, really, to see how this develops, if that sounds good to everybody. We can share this recording. What I might also suggest is that we share summaries, and I think we'll talk about that offline, about sharing summaries of what we've discussed so that we can see the discussion board. Anything else from others that they'd like to mention before we wrap this up? Okay, so I'm not hearing from anyone. So I think that thank you so much for participating, giving us your feedback, and for attending the pre-conference in March as well. And hopefully we can work together to establish new professional development opportunities, or at least use feedback that we've received to establish those opportunities. So thank you to everybody.